Eating for muscle growth sounds like fun on paper. But if you tried it, you know it takes its toll on you. You start gaining body fat. You get out of shape. You run out of breath when you take the stairs. Your cardiovascular system gives out in the gym. You're soon only a shadow of the fit, lean trainee you were just a few weeks ago. Luckily, it doesn't have to be this way. There is a way around this. High protein massing. The protocol is logical, but we are still mesmerized by the effects. You start putting on mass while you stay lean. You smash heavier loads in the gym. You look dry and hard in the mirror. Your physique starts changing. All of a sudden, you need to wonder, where did all this newfound strength come from? It all makes sense though. Your muscles soak up the amino acids while you burn your own body fat. You're basically using the power of protein to recompose your body. All right, let's try to get back to planet Earth for a second, and let's talk about this high protein recomp thing. So protein, every fitness enthusiast's favorite macronutrient, it's super anabolic, it's the main building block of muscle, and we definitely need to eat it if we want to actually build muscle. And as such, we tend to assign some magical powers to protein. And this is actually pretty clear to see even in the scientific community, because we had time and time again studies showing, and even meta-analyses, that there is no benefit over 1.6 grams per kilogram of body weight protein consumption, but still we tend to keep recommending high protein intakes. I see this many times that scientists and people, sometimes even being involved in these meta-analyses, linking to the meta-analyses, and then at the end showing that I still in practice recommend higher protein intakes. It's like, fair enough, man, there is just no amount of evidence that would convince you that there is no need for higher protein intakes. And I think it's because a couple of decades ago, us as a fitness community sort of collectively set our hearts on protein intake. And now this is something that we're just clinging onto as a precious idea that we're just not willing to let go of. And you know what? I think that's okay to a good extent, because that sort of passion and inner broism is what's driving this whole community, because that prompts people to do more research, and that's what's going to advance this field after all. So in this case, what are we talking about here? Many coaches and practitioners in the fitness field have noticed that when they are eating very high amounts of protein, their body composition is starting to change in a more favorable way. For example, during bulking, they notice that they don't gain fat as much, and they are even experiencing some body recomposition, even though that would be kind of counter-indicated based on their training advancement. And you can check out my video on body recomposition for more details on that. So in plain English, what people noticed is that during bulking, if they switch out some of their carbs and fats to protein, instead of just getting bigger, more muscular, but also fatter, they tend to stay leaner and build muscle. And the thing is, I have noticed the same thing myself. But the thing I want to point out is that what we fitness people, who tend to be a bit crazy and obsessed, to put it nicely, notice is not necessarily what's actually going on. No matter how smart and scientifically oriented we would like to think we are, all of us have that inner bro scientist who would like to believe that if we only tweak our diet and training in a couple of ways, we can just defy the laws of physics. So with this bit of a skeptic on the sideline kind of outlook, let's try to examine the question of body recomposition on high protein diets. First of all, what's important to point out is that out of all the macronutrients, protein has the highest thermogenic effect, which means that your body will waste the most amount of energy to break down protein out of all the other macronutrients. So even though protein and carbs are both listed as having 4 calories per gram, protein could actually be rewritten as 3.2 calories per gram, which if you're eating a lot of protein, that can actually add up to some meaningful effect. And even if this by itself doesn't add up to a huge amount of difference, if you're eating a lot of protein instead of carbs or fats, then you're eating a macronutrient that your body really doesn't have any way of storing as fat. Fat is the most efficiently stored out of all the macronutrients. Carbs can also be stored as fat if you're eating a shit ton of them, and at some point your body actually can convert carbs into fats. But even that is less efficient than if you were to eat pure dietary fat. And then if you're eating protein, that is super energetically inefficient to be stored as fat. Now, of course, all of this typically doesn't really matter, because what happens is that when you're eating a lot of protein or carbs, then your body is storing a lot more of the fat you are eating instead of burning it off as fuel. Whereas if you were to eat less protein and less carbs and more fat, then yes, you're storing more fat, but you're also burning a lot more fat because you don't have all the other fluff that would clog up the system, so to speak. But if you're going to the extremes and really minimizing fat intake, for example, then yeah, you could have some sort of quote-unquote metabolic advantage when your body doesn't actually store as much fat as it otherwise would.
But anyway, all this is to say is that when you're eating a really, really high protein diet, it might seem like your body is going through some weird recomposition even though your calories are the same, but you could actually be just changing the energy inside of the calories in, calories out equation. And you might be actually just putting yourself into a small deficit without realizing it because of the extra thermogenic effect. Or if beforehand you were in a really massive calorie surplus because you were kind of dreamer bulking, then now by eating a lot of protein, you could inadvertently put yourself in a smaller energy surplus, which might be more appropriate given your needs. So all of a sudden you notice that, well, I'm no longer getting as fat as I did before, and now my bulking phase resembles less so of a gradual fattening up protocol. The other thing that could be going on here, which actually I think is more likely, is a cosmetic effect. As you know, bloating and water retention are two things that can make a muscular, lean, good-looking guy look like an untrained fat boy. I mean, if you retain a shit ton of water and you get bloated like crazy, that can make the difference between the best Instagram pic of your life to looking like a chubby guy who never lifted a weight in his life. Now, how does this relate to the high protein recomping thing? Well, when you're bulking and you're eating a lot of food, and in the fitness world, we like to have our veggies and fruits and oatmeal, and some people might eat some whole grain bread or whatever. A lot of people actually have certain food sensitivities to these kinds of foods, but we tend to just suck it up and keep eating them, especially during dieting, because these tend to be very satiating and filling, so we would rather have some digestive problems rather than being hungry. But when we are building muscle and are eating a lot of food already, then sometimes just the sheer quantity of foods that we can put down can cause some digestive issues, and add on top of that these slight food sensitivities that people tend to have, then that's a recipe for a lot of bloating, a lot of water retention, and just gut problems all over the place. Now, protein, on the other hand, even though we have these jokes in the fitness industry about the digestive problems that people get when eating a really high protein diet, and you know how we get gassy when eating a lot of protein, and even Gen Pop people tend to say that, well, when I'm eating a really heavy steak, I just feel so worn down and like my digestive system is completely occupied. And that's what plant-based people like to say too, that, man, when I started going vegan, my digestion became so much better because I didn't have all that meat clogging up the machinery. The thing is, protein, and especially animal protein, is one of, if not the most well-digestible and assimilable nutrients that you can eat, period. I mean, meat products and fish are basically non-allergenic completely. Eggs, some people have a sensitivity to them. Dairy products, it sort of depends on the dairy product. Milk is something that a lot of people have sensitivities to. Hard cheeses, very rare. Cottage cheese, Greek yogurt, those sorts of things are sort of in between. And then protein powder, whey protein isolate is well consumable by basically everyone. Whey protein concentrate, casein protein, again, in between. I, for example, have a sensitivity to them. Some people do too. But in general, they are much less allergenic than most plant foods that we tend to consume in a fitness nutritional plan. I mean, when you're eating a bowl of oatmeal, there is a ton of stuff in there that your body simply cannot break down. I mean, that's why we have a pretty voluminous stool as humans, because of all the plant foods that we're eating. On the other hand, when you're eating a piece of steak or chicken breast, basically every single component of that food is well assimilable and completely digestible. I mean, remember, the carnivore diet became a thing because people went on that to alleviate digestive issues. So I think that when someone has been gaining muscle for a while and is eating a lot of food, if they switch out a lot of their oatmeal and salads and fruit to things like chicken or some dairy sources, then all of a sudden they are just dumping a lot of water, they become less bloated, and it just gives them this massive cosmetic improvement all of a sudden. And this can definitely have some residual effects, which may affect your overall well-being, but also your training performance. I mean, when you're not bloated anymore and you don't retain as much water, then I would not be surprised at all if someone all of a sudden trains better, sleep better, and just have overall better well-being and feel more energized during the day. Also, while I think that protein sources in general are pretty moderately satiating, I mean, now luckily we have actual research showing that protein by itself is not necessarily any more satiating than carbs or fats after a certain point, once you actually provided your body with its needs. I've been saying this for a really long time, that when you're hungry on a diet, filling yourself up with even more protein just doesn't make any sense. It's much better to actually eat more filling veggies, fruits, berries, and these kinds of things, which can give you really nice mouthfuls of food instead of eating a few more pieces of chicken breast, which are a lot more caloric. But during an actual bulk, you can get to this point where eating even more salads and fruits can kind of make you feel sick in your stomach just to think of it. But on the other hand, it's easy to tip yourself over to the point where eating a lot of tasty foods would all of a sudden cause some self-control issues and you would overeat a bit too much. And in that case, some protein sources can be actually a pretty good choice because you can eat some nice dairy products and some nice steaks, which are pretty palatable, but they're still not palatable to the point where you couldn't control yourself. So in that context, they can sort of give you that sweet spot where you can eat a lot of them and they are calorie dense enough so that you can actually be in an energy surplus, but they're not so palatable that you would have a problem controlling yourself. So yeah guys, protein is awesome. I like eating a high protein diet too, and if you enjoy the taste of protein sources, awesome. There are some indirect ways in which a high protein diet can help you succeed on a muscle building phase, but I wouldn't get my hopes up too much with the magical recomping effects of high protein diets. But at some point I may turn out to be proven wrong. I'm certainly open to that possibility, but that would be my verdict on high protein diets and body recomposition. So that's all I had to say for today. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it interesting. Drop a like if you liked it, or a dislike if you disliked it. Troll me, I'll troll you back. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and with that, see you next time.